Hey there, welcome back to Farmcraft. I'm John, and this is a robot. A company called Beatbot reached out to me and asked me to do a sponsored video on their award-winning pool cleaning robot, and I just couldn't help myself. I mean, this is new cutting-edge technology, it's a really cool machine, and who doesn't want to play around with a robot, right? But I had two conditions, and they agreed to both of them. Number one, I wanted to be able to do an on-screen teardown of the build. We're going to take this thing apart, we're going to look at the internals, look at how it works, look at the build quality. And two, I wanted the freedom to do an honest review. If I have any critiques or things that I think should be improved to make it better, I'm going to say those in this video, and they were fine with that too. And I think that's a really good sign. That's a company that has confidence in their product, and they're confident in the build quality, and they gave me free rein, so we're going to do a good review. And you know that I'm not going to sugarcoat anything in this video. So let's get into it. Alright, so this thing, it does the floor, and uses these brushes here to scrub the floor, and then it has tracks to move itself around on the floor, just like my excavator. Okay, not just like my excavator, but it does have tracks. That's kind of cool. Now, it also does the walls, and in order to go up the walls, it kind of needs to be able to swim, because now it's going vertically. So it has to be able to control its buoyancy. And I'm pretty sure this thing's going to work like a submarine. There's going to be a container in here somewhere that is full of air right now, but when it wants to go to the bottom of the pool, it pumps it full of water, it changes the overall density of the unit, and it sinks. And it probably adjusts that so that it can go up and down the walls, or however it wants to be. When it's skimming on the surface, it needs to be very buoyant and swim. And in here, we'll get a closer look at them when we do the teardown. It has propellers. So with those propellers, yeah, this would be forward, so it would draw the water in here and then jet it out the back, and it can turn left and right and control itself. The other thing this can do, not just does the walls, but it actually will come up out of the water a little bit to get the water line, and then it will skim the surface. So when it's swimming along the surface, it has a door right here that I don't want to break it. Yeah, it's not hurting anything. Opens up and allows the surface water to come in, and then it goes through the basket to get caught, and then it gets pumped out. And all the water gets pumped out here. So the water pump is there, and it's drawing the water either in the front or in the bottom, depending on what function it's doing. This here, it says ultrasonic AI. I think that is kind of mapping its surroundings, so it maps the pool and uses AI and algorithm to try to come up with an efficient cleaning pattern so that it does a good job. And the last thing it does is it adds water clarifier while it works. They have cartridges that you put in there, and it will add a water clarifier and help keep your pool water crystal clear while it's doing its job. And the interesting thing is it's anything but waterproof. I mean, obviously some parts of this have to be waterproof inside. But, the water can get all through this thing right now. And you can't just make it sealed, because then it's not going to sink. It's going to do nothing but float. So they've had to do some interesting engineering to have this thing do all the functions that it needs to do. Before I tear it apart, I want to take it to a pool, and we're going to test it out and see how it works. So a friend of ours has been kind enough to let us use her pool, and this is a challenging pool because she's got trees all around. And it gets windy, and it's constantly blowing leaves and debris into the pool. And she's used many different cleaning products and things over the years, and she's kind of excited to see how the Beatbot is going to work on her pool as well. So green light, it's fully charged. Take it off the charger, and you select your mode. You can do just the floor and walls, or the whole shebang, and that's what we're going to do. You can also open the Beatbot app. And it took a few minutes to get this set up with Wi-Fi, but then at this point, so I'm in Pro mode now, it's going to do floor, wall, waterline, and surface. And I can pick the modes here, and I can also do a custom mode. So there, the custom mode, it's going to do the floor, the wall, and the surface twice. So if you have more skimming or something you need to do, you can set that up, or you can just have it do everything twice. Pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. It's kind of interesting. To start it, you just put it in the water. turns on, and it's going to spin around and do a scan, kind of see how big the pool is and come up with a strategy on how it wants to clean it. And it wants to start on the floor, so I can see it's starting to sink. So it's doing the equivalent of a submarine dive right now. It's filling up an internal chamber with water so that it gets heavier and it will sink.
Chief of the watch, on the 1MC, dive, dive.
And there it starts moving. Oh yeah, I think it's scanning again now that it's down on the bottom. It wants to take a look around. So it takes several hours to clean a pool, and it's not exactly a fast and exciting thing to film. So we're going to do some fast motion here. It did the bottom, and then it went on to the walls. And kind of cool to see it coming up and doing the water line. It actually comes up all the way out of the water and scrapes the walls above the water. And then after it was done doing the walls and the water line, it pumped the water back out and resumed swimming on the surface. The skimming was kind of interesting. It was definitely getting blown around by the wind, but then again, so was the stuff that was floating on the surface. So it seemed to do a decent job. Alright, well there you go, after cleaning. I mean, it's not perfect, but it was actually pretty windy today. So stuff kept going in the pool after it was done, and it's probably been a couple hours since it finished. And the important thing is, I asked the owner what she thought of it. And she's used a lot of different pool robots and products and things. And overall, she was quite pleased with it. She really liked the fact that it skimmed and the fact that it was cordless, and thought it did a really good job. It is quite convenient. You just put it in and come back and take it out. There's not a whole lot of work that you actually have to do. It does it all for you. It seems to me that this thing works pretty darn well. So I wanted you guys to see some before and after footage. This is right when we started. There's a fair amount of debris on the floor of the pool, also some floating on the surface here. And you can see quite a bit floating on the surface here. We actually threw a little extra in to give it a challenge. All the trees around this pool make it a constant cleaning headache. And here it is the next morning. There's still a small amount of debris, but it's been overnight and more stuff is always blowing in this pool. So you can see it looks a lot better. I did set it up to do a second cleaning and do some additional filming of it. And here it is later the same day. This is the end of the second cleaning. Given how we started, after 2 cleanings, I'd say that's pretty impressive. Alright, we're at the point I'm going to start tearing this thing apart. Now, I seriously doubt this thing is going to work after I'm done with this, because parts of this have been made to be waterproof. They're probably like ultrasonically welded plastic, special sealants, things that I'm just not going to be able to put back the way they were. But that's not the goal. We want to look at the inside and see how this thing's built. The first thing I want to do is take these brushes off. So obviously those are easily replaceable. Nice flexible material. Not going to leave marks, but can also scrub your pool effectively. Interesting. There's a little filter there.
I'm not sure what this does yet, but we do figure this out later.
Looks like one molded piece all the way across there. I wish removing the tracks on my excavator was that easy. Down inside here, there's a little lock tab. See that? Yep. Yep. So, so far everything's plastic, but that is the best material to make something like this out of, as much as possible. It needs to be non-corroding, stainless steel, I guess, but this would be ridiculously expensive if you tried to make this stuff out of stainless steel. It's very tough, very rigid. Plastic bushings. If it ever did get to wearing out, you could just put a new bushing and a new wheel on it really easily. Stainless steel shaft in there. Yeah, it's keyed right there. And this is press fit. It seems pretty reasonable. So most of the screws are the same, and I'm keeping the ones that are different, like with the gears and the wheels with those. But everything else is all the same screw, so that's nice. Alright, now that exposed 3 more screws. There's 2 more screws I missed. I can imagine the engineers at Beatbot laughing at me as I try to figure out how to get this thing apart. Huh. 2 more screws hiding down in here. Several more screws. And we're in. Alright, here we've got rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Those are the contacts that work on the charger to charge it. This is definitely a sealed container, so I'd be willing to say that the brains are all in there, and pumps and motors and stuff like that. Yeah, this is where it's coming out to drive the tracks. This is the filter box, so that's all pretty much empty in there. That to me looks like, yeah, that's very rigid, so that can be full of air or water, and that would affect the density of the unit and determine is it floating or sinking. That is our submarine buoyancy system right there. I wonder if there's not another one of those on this side. Looking at how everything is run, it's well organized. I think this is silicone tubing, feels like, and it definitely looks like they put some pretty good thought into this. Like, none of the hoses are pulled tight or kinked excessively. They even made a little round over there for that. Yeah, so far things are looking good, kind of interesting. I'm glad this is screwed together, because that means I'm going to be able to take that apart and we're going to really get to look at the whole thing. And I was really thinking this top was going to be like glued on, but I'm finding more screws under here. This whole thing might actually come apart without me having to break it. Well, that's a different batch of screws. They're all the same, but they're longer than the first ones. So we will just make a new pile. The inside screws. Got more screws hiding under there. I have a feeling there are more screws that are holding that top on, probably underneath this thing. What do you think the chances are that I get this thing back together? So these are the hoses that went to the buoyancy chambers. I've been looking at this little filter on the bottom. When it's in there, water can enter right here. Now, of course, that's inside the robot, but this whole chamber, once you put it in the pool, is going to flood. So it can draw water in there. So that looks like the intake to these water pumps, which I'm pretty sure we're going to see is for the buoyancy chambers. And it's just filtered so that they're not pumping the chambers full of junk. All right, so I'm going to pull these off.
This is a support bracket for the wires and hoses. And here's the one on the other side. And here I spent quite a bit of time trying to get this thing apart unsuccessfully. It's kind of like doing a puzzle.
So there's some security screws down in there. I really don't think these are the issue, but I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't get them out. Possible this is holding on this bottom plate and covering up some other screws. Yeah, that's for interfacing with the cartridge that goes in here. Ah, we're in like sin. Okay. I don't even think I broke anything. So these have the motor in them, and of course there's a wire there. Okay, so right there is the little motor that opens this door for skimming. When you're in operation, the pump is pumping and it's drawing the water in there. So the basket's down in there, so the water gets into the basket, gets drawn through the basket, filters, and then out through the water pump. It can enter the basket through the bottom, and there's a little flapper there so that water can come in but then not get back out. Or it can enter the water straight through that door. So it just depends on what mode it is. When it's skimming, it opens this door, the water comes into the basket, and then gets pumped out of there. So let's take these off. It's pretty interesting how they have these separate electronic sections that are like hermetically sealed. Like this, you can see it's got circuitry in it and the buttons and everything. And the face of the buttons is all sealed. I wonder if this thing will still turn on. It sure will. It doesn't like something. I'm not surprised. Let's turn it off. Over here we've got the motor to the skimming door. Yep, just a little geared motor in there. In its own little sealed container. So this is a sensor of some kind, not sure what. So one more wire here. Okay. Alright, and that one goes to another sensor. Looks exactly like the one on the side. So yeah, I think we got two ultrasonic sensors there.
And here you can really see these front buoyancy tanks.
Now, one thing I suspect, but I don't really have any way to prove this, is that it doesn't let the air out of these. It leaves the air in, but it just pumps the water in, and the air compresses under the pressure. Because if it let the air out, where's it going to get the air to put back in when it's at the bottom of the pool? At that point, it just needs to pump out and let the air re-expand, if that makes any sense. So let's open up one of our propellers, if we can without breaking it. All right. Well, that's amazing to me. That is far less sealed appearing than I would have expected. I'm going to see if this thing is just sealed with an O-ring, or did they make a motor that it doesn't matter if water gets in it? That can't be. Could be, but I doubt it. Huh. It sure could be. It's wet in there. That is very cool. I like that. The stator and the rotor are both potted epoxy, and water can get in between, so the magnetic field is actually traveling through water, but it doesn't matter because everything else is totally sealed up. I've never seen a motor like that. That's pretty wild. You can see the water dripping out of the motor that works just fine. there's the potted rotor. And inside there, the potted windings. And the reason it looks shiny is because it's still wet. That is a cool motor. This might be hard for you to see. That down in there is a sealed bearing. I would think for sure it would just be like a bronze bushing, but there's an actual ball bearing in there. So yeah, I mean, I've taken a lot of things apart. Oftentimes these plastic things, when you take them apart, it's just obvious how junky they are. That's not the case with this. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, this is pretty wild and pretty well built. Motor with actual ball bearings that just operates underwater. Fill it full of water, who cares? Worked just fine. These may also be buoyancy tanks. This is hooked to the output that's coming from this thing. We'll look at that in a little bit. This feels like a hollow tank. And then this is what went to these tanks. So I think this is also a buoyancy tank. I don't know what that's for. I can tell you everything feels like they really tried to make it out of the best quality stuff they could. I mean, obviously you could have done stainless steel, but you don't have a lot of options with a unit like this, and plastic I think is probably your best choice, and everything is really rigid and tough. This isn't the cheap plastic that you bend it a little bit and it just snaps off. Yeah. So I've already seen enough to know this thing is well built. I'm pretty impressed with it, actually. It's much better built than I was expecting. And I've noticed something else interesting here. If you look right in those holes, I think those were open when they were assembling, and then they filled it full of epoxy because you can actually see air bubbles in there. So that whole thing is potted. So you're not getting those wires out. Hopefully, though, I will still be able to split the halves of the clamshell there and open this thing up. Almost makes me wonder if they didn't build this thing so that they could actually service it. When people send it back to them, they would be able to tear it down and open it up, replace components that need replacing, replace the battery, and put it back together. I don't see why not. All right. Here's your main pump motor. That's interesting. I don't know what that is. So this was in the compartment that was for the clarifier. Oh, wow. They definitely built this thing to be serviceable. That looks like a USB port, something like that. That's an interface port right there. This was right over top of it. So they can open it up and plug into the computer and diagnose, see what's going on with it. So we got some desiccant packets in here. Keep it dry. All right, here and here are water pumps because they communicate with these hoses there. So those are the pumps that are involved in the buoyancy, I'm pretty sure. Yep. Wow, the whole surface of that board has been epoxied. There's a thin layer of epoxy covering the entire board. Both sides. That ensures that all your components, nothing's going to vibrate. It's going to make the board last longer. That is a well-made circuit board, no doubt. And I don't think this is going to come off because the other side of this is that area there that's full of epoxy. So I think that is probably permanently attached. Yeah, that's not going to come off. That's not going anywhere. So these are the motors that drive the wheels. And it looks like it probably seals by tightening down the nut. Let me loosen that. Yeah. So that nut had some Loctite on it. It's either stainless or aluminum. And the nut is brass. And yep, there's the O-ring. So I'll tell you guys, I really thought I'd get in here and find some things where they were cheaping out and say you really ought to do this different. But I mean, stainless washer, brass nut with Loctite and an O-ring. I don't know what you would suggest that's better than that. They didn't goop some, RTV on it and just stick it together and hope. That's the kind of stuff you often see, and that's the kind of stuff that's going to fail in 3 months, 6 months. This is like a long-term, it's a mechanical sealed solution. The pump motors have some spring clips on them down there. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get those off. Afraid I'm messing that up. Oh, that's interesting. That's a peristaltic pump.
And you may be surprised that I knew right away what this type of pump was called. And I could leave you thinking that I'm really smart, or I can show you that it says it right on the pump.
I think I can actually get inside and show you how that works too. So this kind of pump, what it's basically doing, fluid gets into the tubing, and it, using a gear actually, pushes the fluid along with each tooth on this tubing. So it's just kind of pumping like that, but it's continuous because it's a gear rotating, and then another tooth comes behind it and another tooth comes behind it. So it makes for a very steady and predictable flow. Now, I pulled this thing all the way through, but I think I can fix it if I can get this open without breaking it. So not exactly a gear in this case. 3 lobes. So there's the output of the motor. It interfaces with this, and this ends up spinning. And it has 3 rollers on it that are free to spin as well. This tube is inside there, and this is spinning with that tube outside of it. So because it's spinning in a direction, it's going to pull from one side and push to the other side. So it's just constantly pushing the fluid along the tube. And I'm really glad to see that because I didn't mess up the pump. I can put this back together. There we go. Actually didn't break it. Yeah, this is straight to the battery. I've got 24 volts. It's so much easier in the dry area because the screws are magnetic. They don't have to be stainless. Yeah, this does not have cells in it. Not like, there's not going to be Samsung cells in here like in a cordless tool battery. Yeah, this is one of those rectangular type batteries that you find in a cell phone, except that they're stacked. So yeah, I think that's as far as we're taking that. Opening this up won't accomplish anything other than cause a fire and ruin the battery. And look at this. This is where the battery charges. It comes up through these wires and then hooks onto the circuit board and then gets sent to the battery. They put that in and then potted it with epoxy. So those are not going to leak. What could that be? Temperature sensor maybe?
It could also be a water sensor. Something in here turns the unit on when you place it in the pool.
I guess part of me hoped that I would be able to tear this down and put it back together, but I really did not think I would be able to. The way this thing was built, it looks like they built it to be serviceable, which is amazing to me in 2024. You don't see that. I'm pretty impressed with the build quality of this, I have to say. And, don't take my word for it. If you're interested in this product and you're watching this video because of that, go look in the comment section, because there's a lot of people out there that know an awful lot about how things are built, and they can see the video too, and they can tell me I'm an idiot if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. I think this thing is pretty impressive in the way they built it. They really tried to do it the best that they could. So what do you think the chances are that I can put this thing back together and have it work? I think it'd be generous to say 50-50. Let's see. I'm going to put Loctite on the nut like it had it. Looks like they were using the blue variety. Click.
People often ask how I keep organized when I'm disassembling something so that I know how to put it back together. And it's a combination of different things that I do. It kind of depends on what it is and how long it's going to be apart before I'm putting it back together. If it's going to be apart for a while, I have to be very organized or I end up forgetting too much. In this case, I knew I was going to be putting it back together pretty quickly, so I tried to group the screws based on size, and mostly I would put the screws back in the holes they came out of so that I knew where they went back. And then refer to the video footage when I needed to, which I did have to do a couple times for this. If you're doing your own teardowns, get out a camera, take lots of pictures, put a video camera on it, and that will really help you when you get to the point where you're trying to put it back together and realize you've forgotten something. So this is the intake for the water pumps and the buoyancy tanks, but I realized as I was putting it back together that it's also the output.
Yeah, and the cool thing is about these pumps is you just run them in reverse and they'll just pump the other direction. So this is the intake and the output for filling the buoyancy chambers. I had a bunch of screws and I didn't know where they went. They go here underneath the handle. I was picturing them way down inside. Probably the first step in the center of that dry compartment. It is back together. And honestly, I was fully expecting to have some leftover screws or something. Power's on. Let's see if it's happy. Looks like it. Showing green. Lets me select a mode. Things should be ready to work. My overall impression of this is a very useful and well-built tool. One thing I would suggest is they have the general program, and I don't think there's any way to make it do the surface first. You can make it with custom mode, you can make it just do the surface. But I think it would probably be better to do the surface first when you're doing the whole pool, because what's floating on the surface while you're cleaning the bottom is going to end up sinking, and anything that sinks, you know, after you've started cleaning the bottom, it's going to miss. So I think it might be worth them putting in a cleaning function where it would do the surface first, then go down to the bottom and then do the walls and the water line, and then maybe do the surface again. I don't have a lot of negatives to say about it. It seems to have a really good battery life. It charges quickly. It's well built. We've established that, and it does the job. And it's easy. I mean, not having to deal with cords. All you have to do is take it off the charger, put it in the pool, let it do its thing, take it out of the pool, clean the basket, put it back on the charger. That's it. And if you do that daily, you're going to have a clean pool. It's kind of hard to complain about that. Pool owners out there, we used to have an above ground pool, which this does work on above ground pools just like in ground. But pool owners know that pools are a constant maintenance headache. And something like this that's going to make that easier will be welcomed by many. And I also want to say, my friend who let me use her pool to do this video said she really liked the unit. And when Beatbot heard that she really liked it, they actually sent her one for free. So she's getting a brand new AquaSense Pro, never been used, never been disassembled by a farmer. It's going to be hers just as a thanks for helping to make this video happen. Well, there you go, guys. Robot teardown put back together, and the thing still works. That amazes me. I think I got a little bit lucky on that one. I want to thank Beatbot for sponsoring this video and letting me play around with their AquaSense Pro. I think that is a cool little robot there. And I hope this video was helpful to anyone who's interested in the product. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. The next video is going to be on the old excavator. The beast is back.